China, Japan, and South Korea started their long-awaited first round of FTA negotiations on Tuesday in Seoul. Together, they account for about 20% of the world's total GDP. And if tariff barriers are removed, this economic bloc will become the world's third largest. Kim Hyung-ju of LG Economic Research Institute says the preparation stage took so long because all three countries had brought different expectations to the table, and some members had been less proactive than others.
전통적으로 한중일 FTA에서
China has been considerably proactive, Korea neutral, and Japan reluctant to participate.
But a more serious and fundamental issue must be fixed for the three-wheel FTA to roll: trust.
가장 좀 넘기 힘든 장벽은 서로 간의
The hardest barrier to overcome is the lack of trust between the countries. To unify the economy, members must be able to predict each other's next moves and trust that a new strategy or policy will stay put once implemented.
Gathering for the first round of negotiations is only the beginning. Experts foresee another 5 or maybe more years of discussions before we can see the world's third largest economic bloc come into shape. But they say it's already a meaningful change to see the three countries come together to discuss unity, despite their sensitive pasts. Jung, CCTV, Seoul.
For more on the free trade agreement, Maricruz Magowan, economist and vice president of the National Economists Clubs, joins us here in Washington, D.C. at our studios. Welcome to the show.
Thank you, Phil.
Let me start with the free trade agreement. They've been working on it for 10 years. Japan, South Korea, China. Are they close to getting a deal done, or is this the reinitiation of the beginning?
Well, I think they are working a new kind of trade. What it's interesting to see about this, it goes beyond Japan, South Korea, and China. It is heavily also involved the United States and the European Union. What you are seeing is like an international chess game in the trade area. That's what we are seeing. Everybody wants to accommodate themselves to adapt to the new economic order. That is a fact. People already know that. The US wants to stay having the lead. The European Union wants to keep close to the United States. Everybody is thinking, how am I going to come out in this new order?
I like the way you put it about this, this chess game, but I have to ask you, so the big players are moving the pieces around. What happens to all the smaller countries in the area?
Well, what happens with the small pieces of chess?
I mean, I think that's a legitimate question, right? What happens to the smaller countries who don't have the political power to forge these big trading deals?
Well, they may have a voice if they pull it together. That's something that many countries are doing. Many economists are saying what we are seeing now in the world is that countries are creating these blocks, and everything is being played in blocks. The poor countries, the small countries, should do something like that. I don't know if they have the political power, as you say, to do that, the economic power to do that, but if they don't do so, they are not going to be participants of the new process.
Let's talk about Japan, China, and the Korean deal a bit more here. Let's say they work out something to the tune of what you were talking about. What would the key benefit be to the average person who's watching our show?
Depending on the details of the trade, and depending on what comes first and what comes next. For example, one of the reasons they want to create this partnership is because they want to come to counteract the trade partnership, the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TPP.
The TPP.
The TPP is very important that they are not left alone, especially for China, because China is not in the TPP. Also, when Europe saw that the United States started the TPP, they started with the United States separately, the TTIP, the including investment, and they want to finish that before the TPP is finished. Why? Because they want to set the rules of the game.
So there's the Atlantic, there's the Pacific, there's the China, South Korea, and Japan. So there are all these different trade pacts that are happening, and I mean, as a consumer, does it make the things that when I go to the store and buy something, does it make things more expensive? Does it make things less expensive? And how does it improve the quality of life for average people?
Well, I think it's a good thing because it's more competition. So prices have to go down and quality has to go up, because if they had to compete, they had to sell the best product they can. So that's a good news for everybody.
So by reducing taxes and tariffs on each other's tariffs, it's basically one big country, at least from an economic standpoint, and you have more telephone providers, more mobile phone providers with less taxes, and you're saying that's a benefit to the consumers.
That's a benefit to everybody, because in order to compete, they have to have competitive prices and the best quality they can sell. Otherwise, the competition is going to sell more than them. So it's a constant fight for a piece of the market, and it's going to happen.
What about regulation? What about the banking system? That's been a big part of what the world's been dealing with for the past 5 years. These trade partnerships, I mean, these issues must come up about, do we intertwine the banking systems, and how do we regulate them?
Well, it's also politics. Politics always plays a very strong role in trade agreements. It's not only monetary policy, in the case that we are discussing right now. It's not only fiscal policy, but it's also politics. Who has to win? Who has more power? As I said, this is a big chess game, and let's see what's going to come out after the game is not say over, but let's say part 1, part 2, because this is going to take decades. This is the new order.
Well, I was just going to ask you, so it's been 10 years, they're now talking about it, so we're talking about it, but what's a realistic expectation as to what's going to get done and when?
It's going to be slow, and that's my take.
It
has to be slow, because there are so many players, and there are so many interests, and it's so complicated. It's not just trade. It's not about reducing tariffs or adjusting the currency. No, it goes beyond that. It's not only about exemptions. Right now they are talking that Japan clearly, for the first time, said, I don't want you to touch this exemption in agriculture. So this is opening the case for other countries to say, okay, I don't want you to touch this or to touch that. So this is only going to, take the process more time. Obviously, because if somebody's having an exemption, the other country also wants
It sounds a little bit like Congress here in Washington, D.C. Everyone has their pet projects. Everyone has their pet exemptions.
It's a very good comparison, I would say.
All right.
Yes, I think the process is going to be similar to that. And let's see what happens. Not next year, it's going to take years.
Maricruz Magowan, always a pleasure having you on set with us. Thank you very much. We'll watch along with you to the progress of these free trade talks.